My in-laws were slowly wrecking my life, so I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. For 3 years, Patricia and Donald had been deliberately and quietly tearing my marriage apart. You know how sometimes family can be a little much? Mine took that to an entirely new, terrifying level. I never imagined my own mother-in-law would weaponize my deepest, darkest secret, a secret from a past I desperately tried to bury, to utterly shatter my life and try to steal my newborn baby. It started subtly, like a tiny crack in a dam. My husband Wesley's parents, Patricia and Donald, thought they had a divine right to an opinion on everything in my life. Patricia would swoop into my kitchen during visits, declaring my carefully organized cabinets inefficient, rearranging them to her arbitrary standards. Donald, at family dinners, would casually trash my career choices, hinting that I was somehow holding Wesley back from his mythical, true potential. It wasn't just my job or my home, either. It was my clothes, my friends, my cooking, even the way I dared to fold laundry. They had a critique for every breath I took, but the real damage, the insidious kind, crept in with Wesley. Patricia, with her uncanny timing, would call Wesley during our date nights, fabricating emergencies like a leaking dishwasher, demanding he drop everything to fix it right then. Donald, not to be outdone, once needed furniture moved at 10 p.m. on our anniversary. And every single time, Wesley would jump. He'd rush off, leaving me alone at restaurants, movies half-watched, vacations abruptly cut short. When I dared to complain, to voice the hurt and frustration, Wesley would just sigh, a weariness in his voice, and say, "They're getting older. They need us." They were 58, for crying out loud, perfectly capable of calling a plumber or hiring movers. I bit my tongue, swallowed the resentment, and tried to be the bigger person. The breaking point wasn't just a crack, it was an explosion. I'd worked my tail off for years, climbing the corporate ladder. And then it happened, a promotion to senior manager. A 40% raise, my own team, real responsibility. I was beyond ecstatic. Wesley, bless his heart, planned a small celebration dinner. But the moment Patricia walked in, she didn't just undermine my achievement, she obliterated it. With a flourish, she produced a folder crammed with job listings, holding them up for everyone to see. "I found some real opportunities for you," she announced, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Administration positions at Donald's company. Much more stable than whatever you're doing now." In front of my family, my friends, she had not only dismissed my hard-earned success, but actively tried to redirect my entire career path. The humiliation burned, sharp and immediate. That night, something inside me snapped. The years of being the bigger person, of swallowing anger, of endless compromise, evaporated. No more. I knew exactly what would wound them most deeply, what would truly sting: control. Patricia and Donald were control fanatics. They needed to manage every situation, every person. They couldn't stand being excluded, being left out of decisions. So I decided I would plan our future without them. Every single step. First, I told Wesley we were trying for a baby. He was over the moon, already planning how to share the news with his parents. But I convinced him to wait. "Let's surprise them once it's real," I suggested, knowing full well the agonizing suspense it would create. Then I started dropping little hints to Patricia and Donald about other couples having babies, watching their faces tighten with thinly veiled frustration that Wesley wasn't producing grandchildren on their timeline. "Oh, we're just not ready yet," I'd say sweetly, while secretly tracking my ovulation like a hawk. When I finally got pregnant, I swore Wesley to secrecy. "Let's wait until the second trimester," I urged. "It's safer." He reluctantly agreed, though I could tell he was bursting to share. For 14 weeks, I watched Patricia fish for information at every family gathering. Any news to share, she'd ask, her eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with pointed expectation. "Not yet," I'd smile back, the desperation in her gaze a delicious, small victory. At 14 weeks, with both our families gathered, I made the announcement. But I added something extra, something I knew would hit them where it hurt. "And we're also moving." I chirped, making eye contact with Patricia. "We found a perfect house 3 hours north, closer to my parents." The look of absolute horror on Patricia's face? Priceless. Donald actually gasped. Wesley looked completely confused, but a quick squeeze of his hand prompted him to play along. We weren't actually moving, of course, but watching them spiral for the next 2 weeks, calling constantly, showing up unannounced, desperately trying to convince us to stay, was incredibly therapeutic. Patricia even cried, claiming I was stealing her grandchild. Donald offered to buy us a house nearby. It was a beautiful, petty act of defiance. Then, everything changed. Suddenly, terrifyingly. Wesley sat me down, his face a strange mask of confusion and dread. "Mom called," he said slowly, his voice almost a whisper. She told me something about you. He pulled out his phone, and my stomach plummeted. Screenshots. Police reports from 8 years ago. My real name, the one I'd legally changed. Court documents. Newspaper articles with headlines that made my blood run cold. Local woman charged in elderly neighbor's death. Wesley's hands were shaking as he scrolled through the images. Is this you? The article says Natasha Brennan. That's not your name. My throat clenched. I'd buried Natasha so deep, sometimes I forgot she even existed. Let me explain, I managed, my voice hoarse. My mother said you killed someone, his voice cracked, raw with emotion. She said you changed your identity to hide it. That you're a murderer who trapped me. The walls of my carefully constructed life started closing in. Patricia had found my deepest, darkest secret. The thing I'd run from for nearly a decade. The thing that still woke me at 3 a.m. some nights, gasping, guilty. I didn't murder anyone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But someone did die, and it was my fault. Wesley set his phone down as if it burned his hands. Start talking. I took a deep breath. This was the story I'd sworn I'd never tell. When I was 22, I lived in Portland, I began. I worked 2 jobs, renting a tiny apartment in a building full of elderly residents. My neighbor across the hall was this sweet old woman, Mrs. Kowalski. She was 81, lived alone, no family nearby. I paused, memories flooding back, her floral house dresses, the way she'd bake cookies every Sunday. She had early-stage dementia. Not terrible, but bad enough she'd forget to eat sometimes, forget to take her medication. Wesley listened, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on me. I started checking on her, I continued, bringing her dinner, making sure she took her pills. Her social worker knew about me, appreciated the help. For 6 months, everything was fine. Mrs. Kowalski called me her guardian angel. My voice cracked. This part never got easier. Then I got busy. My boss at the restaurant gave me extra shifts. I was saving for nursing school. I started skipping days. Instead of checking on Mrs. Kowalski every evening, I'd pop in twice a week. I told myself it was enough, that her social worker visited on Wednesdays. Wesley's expression remained unchanged, a stony mask. 1 week in January, I worked doubles 5 days straight. I was exhausted. I didn't check on her at all. On day 6, I finally knocked on her door. No answer. I used the spare key she'd given me. Even now, 8 years later, I can still smell that apartment. The gas from her stove she'd left on for days, the spoiled food, the terrible stillness. Tears rolled down my face. She'd fallen in her bathroom, hit her head on the tub. The medical examiner estimated she'd been there for 4 days before she died. 4 days of lying on that cold tile, confused and alone. If I'd checked on her even once that week, she'd have lived. The police investigated, I said, wiping my eyes. They found my fingerprints everywhere because I'd been helping her. They interviewed neighbors who'd seen me come and go. For 3 weeks, they treated me like a suspect. But you said you were charged, Wesley said quietly, cutting through the silence. I confirmed. Elder neglect causing death. The prosecutor argued that once I'd taken on a caregiving role, I had a legal duty to continue it properly. That my negligence directly led to her death. My lawyer said it was overreach, that I was just a neighbor helping out. But the media didn't see it that way. I remembered the reporters outside my apartment, the whispers at work, how my friends slowly stopped calling. The case went on for 9 months, I explained, the memories still vivid. I lost both jobs. Burned through my savings on legal fees. The prosecutor wanted jail time, 2 to 4 years. My face was in every local paper. People sent me death threats. Called me a killer. Said I'd murdered an innocent old woman for her money, which was insane because she had nothing. Wesley rubbed his face, his weariness palpable. What happened? My lawyer cut a deal, I confessed. I pled guilty to a reduced charge, criminal negligence causing death. I got probation, community service, and a fine. But the conviction stayed on my record. I couldn't get hired anywhere, couldn't rent an apartment because landlords would Google my name. Couldn't move forward with my life. So, you changed your name? I nodded. I sold everything, moved to Philadelphia, and filed for a legal name change. Became someone new. Started over completely. And you never told me. His voice was hollow, filled with a raw pain that ripped through me. We've been together 4 years, married for 2, and you never mentioned that you were convicted of killing someone. It wasn't murder, Wesley. It was negligence, and I've lived with the guilt every single day. Mrs. Kowalski's face haunts me. I worked my ass off to become someone she'd be proud of. I got my nursing certification specifically to care for elderly patients, to make sure what happened to her never happens to anyone else. Wesley stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen, his anger finally surfacing. That's great. Really noble. But you lied to me about who you are, about your past. My mother was right. I don't even know you. The mention of Patricia snapped something inside me, a flicker of my own anger returning. Your mother hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on your pregnant wife. You're not angry about that. Don't change the subject. He slammed his hand on the counter. I'm not. Think about what she did, Wesley. She went through my past to find something to destroy our marriage. This wasn't an accident. She weaponized the worst thing that ever happened to me. Because you lied about it. The circular logic made me dizzy. I was going to tell you eventually. When the time was right. When? After the baby was born? After 10 years of marriage? Never. I don't know. I admitted, tears welling up again. I was scared. This thing has ruined my life once already. I couldn't risk it happening again. Wesley grabbed his keys. I need to think. I'm going to my parents' house. Of course he was. They're going to poison you against me. You know that, right? Maybe they're trying to protect me, he mumbled, heading for the door. The door slammed shut, leaving me standing alone in our kitchen, 7 months pregnant, watching my marriage crumble. Patricia had won. For the next 3 days, Wesley stayed at his parents' house. He texted once to say he was safe and needed space. I called him 11 times. He answered none. My mother, bless her, drove down from Vermont when I told her what happened. She'd been there through the whole Mrs. Kowalski nightmare, sat through my trial, held my hand when the verdict came down. This isn't your fault, she said, making me tea in my own kitchen. Wesley's reaction is understandable, but Patricia manufactured this crisis. She targeted you. She exposed the truth, Mom. I should have told him years ago. Maybe. But her motive wasn't truth-telling. It was destruction. She squeezed my hand. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I'd been asking myself the same thing. 3 days of crying and spiraling had gotten me nowhere. Patricia had nuked my life, and I'd let it happen. No more. I called my old lawyer from the Portland case. He'd retired, but gave me contact info for a colleague specializing in privacy law. The consultation lasted 2 hours. Private investigators can access public records, the attorney explained. Court documents, newspaper archives, anything publicly available. But if they access sealed records or used illegal methods, you'd have a case. How do I find out? I asked, a sliver of hope igniting. I'll request disclosure of the PI's methods through your divorce attorney. We're not getting divorced, I corrected, a lump in my throat. Not yet, she said gently, but you should prepare for that possibility. And regardless, we need to know what they did and how they did it. If there were violations, we can file harassment charges against your in-laws. I hired her on the spot. Next, I called my obstetrician. I need you to document something in my medical file. My in-laws are not to have any information about my pregnancy or delivery. No visitation rights. Nothing. Are you sure? Dr. Reyes asked carefully. That's pretty extreme. I'm sure. Can you note that in my chart? Absolutely. I'll flag your file right now. The third call was to a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. I booked an emergency session for the following day. By the time my mother left that evening, I had a plan. Patricia wanted a war? She'd get one. Wesley finally came home on day 4. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. He barely glanced at me as he grabbed clothes from our bedroom. You're moving out? I asked, my voice thin. Temporarily. Until I figure things out. Figure what out? Whether you believe your wife or your manipulative mother. He flinched. It's not that simple. It really is, Wesley. I made a terrible mistake 8 years ago. I've paid for it in every possible way. Your mother weaponized it to destroy us. Those are the facts. You still lied. And I'm sorry. Genuinely, deeply sorry. But your mother violated my privacy, hired strangers to stalk me, and timed this revelation for maximum damage. Why aren't you angry at her? I am angry at her. He shoved a toothbrush into his bag. I'm angry at everyone. I feel like my whole life is built on lies. That's dramatic, and you know it. Our relationship is real. Our baby is real. One omission about my past doesn't negate 4 years together. He sat heavily on the bed. For the first time since this started, he looked at me. Really looked. Were you ever going to tell me? I sat beside him, careful not to touch. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me thought if enough time passed, it wouldn't matter. That Natasha would stay dead and buried. Another part of me knew you deserved the truth, but was too scared to risk losing you. You're losing me anyway because your mother manipulated this entire situation. She didn't find this information by accident, Wesley. She went looking for something to destroy me. Think about what that means. He was quiet for a long time. Mom said you're dangerous. That you have a pattern of hurting people and covering it up. I laughed bitterly. A pattern based on what? One tragic accident 8 years ago when I was barely an adult myself? That's not a pattern. That's Patricia making things up. She showed me other stuff, too. About your name change. Said you could be hiding anything. I changed my name legally, through the courts. It's all documented. There's no secret criminal past. No hidden identity. Just one horrible mistake I've spent years atoning for. I felt the baby kick and pressed my hand to my belly. Does she know I'm a pediatric nurse now? That I spend my days caring for sick children? Does that sound like someone dangerous? Wesley's eyes followed my hand to my stomach. Something in his expression softened. She thinks you trapped me with a pregnancy. That's insane. We tried for a baby together. You were there for every step. She says you probably sabotaged birth control to lock me in. The accusation was so absurd, I nearly laughed. Did you tell her that's crazy? That we made this choice together? I told her you wouldn't do that. He paused. But then again, I didn't think you'd hide a criminal conviction either. Wesley, I waited until he looked at me. I love you. I have never manipulated you. Yes, I kept something painful from my past private, but everything else between us has been real and honest. You know me. You know who I am. I thought I did. He left with his bag. I listened to his car pull away and felt something inside me harden. If Wesley couldn't see what his mother was doing, if he was going to choose her narrative over our life together, then maybe I needed to accept that. But I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, I drove to Patricia and Donald's house. Wesley's car was in the driveway. Perfect. Patricia answered the door with a satisfied smirk. Oh, you. We need to talk, I said, pushing past her into the foyer. All of us. Wesley appeared from the kitchen, looking panicked. What are you doing here? Donald emerged behind him, protective. I think you should leave. Not until we settle this. I turned to Patricia. You hired a private investigator to stalk your pregnant daughter-in-law. Want to explain why? I was protecting my son from a criminal. You were manufacturing a crisis. There's a difference. Donald stepped forward. You lied about who you are. You have a conviction for killing someone. I have a conviction for negligence. There's a massive difference between that and murder, which is what you're implying. I was a 22-year-old kid who made a terrible mistake. I've served my time, changed my life, and built a career helping people. None of that mattered to you though, did it, Patricia? You just wanted ammunition. She crossed her arms. I wanted the truth. Something you apparently don't value. The truth? Fine, let's talk about truth. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I had my attorney request the PI's report. Want to know what we found? Patricia's smirk faltered slightly. Your investigator accessed sealed juvenile records from when I was 16. That's illegal. They also contacted people from my past under false pretenses, which violates privacy laws. They photographed me leaving medical appointments, following me for weeks. That's stalking. Donald's face reddened. That's ridiculous. We have every right to investigate someone living with our son. Actually, you don't. And my attorney is filing harassment charges this afternoon. We're also pursuing a restraining order. Wesley looked between us, stunned. What? I kept my eyes on Patricia. You crossed a line. You didn't just expose my past. You broke laws doing it. We have documentation of every violation. You wanted to destroy me. Congratulations. You might have destroyed your relationship with your son instead. Patricia's mask cracked. You ungrateful little careful, I warned. Everything you say right now is going on record. My attorney is very thorough. This is insane, Donald said. We're trying to protect Wesley from a woman with a history of violence. Violence? I was negligent, not violent. There's a difference, but you don't care about differences or truth or anything except control. I turned to Wesley. I came here to give you a choice. You can believe their narrative. The one where I'm some dangerous criminal who trapped you. Or you can look at the actual facts. I made a mistake at 22. I paid for it legally and morally. I rebuilt my life. I met you. We built something real together. Your parents can't stand that I exist outside their control, so they manufactured this crisis to break us up. Wesley stared at me. You're filing charges against my parents? Against their PI, technically, but yes. What they did was illegal. Just because I have a painful past doesn't give them the right to stalk and harass me. She's our daughter-in-law, Donald protested. We have a right to know who she is. You have a right to ask me directly. You don't have a right to hire criminals to dig up sealed records and follow me around. Patricia finally found her voice. Wesley, you can't let her do this. We're your parents. Everything we've done has been out of love for you. I watched Wesley's face carefully. This was the moment. Either he'd see what they were doing or he wouldn't. Mom, he said slowly, did you really access sealed records? It's not important how we got the information. What matters is did you? His voice was harder now. Because that's illegal. You could have just talked to her, asked questions. Instead, you hired someone to break laws to protect me? Patricia's voice rose. She's dangerous, Wesley. Can't you see that? She takes care of sick kids for a living, Mom. She volunteers at the children's hospital on weekends. She cried for 2 days straight when one of her tiny patients died last month. Does that sound dangerous to you? I felt hope flutter in my chest. She manipulated you. Patricia insisted. The pregnancy, the moving threat, all of it. She's been playing you. The moving thing was my idea, I admitted. I was petty and wanted to watch you panic. That's on me. But the pregnancy? We planned that together. Wesley wanted a baby as much as I did. Wesley looked at his mother. Is that what this is really about? You can't control our decisions anymore, so you're trying to destroy my marriage. We just want what's best for you. No, Wesley's voice was firm. You want what's best for you. You want me close by, available whenever you call, living the life you planned. But that's not what I want. Donald tried to interrupt. Son. I'm not finished, Wesley said, turning back to his parents. He looked exhausted, but resolute. You should have told me about Mrs. Kowalski, he said to me, his voice softening. That was wrong. But I understand why you were scared. And I'm sorry I didn't see what Mom and Dad were doing. Patricia made a strangled sound. I think we all need space, Wesley continued, his voice heavy with finality. Mom, Dad, I love you, but you crossed so many lines here. You violated my wife's privacy, broke laws, and tried to manipulate me into leaving her. That's not okay. I need you to leave us alone for a while. No calls, no visits, no emergencies. We'll reach out when we're ready. Patricia and Donald sputtered protests, but Wesley was done. He grabbed my hand and led me to the door. We drove home in silence, the tension slowly draining out of the car. Once inside our house, he pulled me into his arms. I'm so sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I should have believed you from the start. You were in shock. I get it. No, I wasn't thinking clearly. I let them get in my head. He pulled back to look at me, his eyes earnest. Tell me everything about Mrs. Kowalski. About what happened. About why you changed your name. No more secrets. Please. We stayed up until 3 a.m. talking. I told him everything, the whole terrible story. How Mrs. Kowalski would bake snickerdoodles and tell stories about her late husband. How her dementia made her forget sometimes that he was gone, and how I'd find her crying because she'd set the table for 2 and he hadn't come home. I told him about the guilt that ate at me, how I'd lie awake replaying that week, wondering what would have happened if I'd just checked on her once. How the image of her body on that bathroom floor would never leave me. I told him about the trial, the prosecutor's accusations, the way the media made me sound like a monster, how my own neighbors started crossing the street to avoid me. I wanted to disappear, I said. I wanted to stop being the person who let an old woman die, so I became someone else. And then I met you, and I was so terrified of losing you that I convinced myself the past didn't matter. Wesley held me while I cried. It does matter, he said, gently stroking my hair. But not the way my mother thinks. It matters because it made you who you are. Someone who actually cares. Someone who became a nurse to make up for one terrible mistake. I'll never make up for it. Maybe not. But you've saved so many kids, helped so many families. Mrs. Kowalski would be proud of you. I wanted to believe that. The next week was complicated. My attorney moved forward with documenting the PI's violations. We weren't sure yet if we'd press charges, but having everything on record felt important. Wesley's parents called 47 times in 3 days. He didn't answer. Patricia showed up at our house twice. We didn't answer the door. She left notes, rambling letters about how we were breaking her heart and she was only trying to help. She doesn't see it, Wesley said, reading one of her letters, his face grim. She genuinely thinks she did nothing wrong. Classic narcissism. The rules don't apply to her because her intentions were good. Should you respond? That's up to you, but I'd wait until you're ready. She's going to twist anything you say right now. He waited another week. Then he sent one text, we need space. Stop contacting us. We'll reach out when ready. Patricia's response came immediately. You're making a terrible mistake. She's controlling you. You'll regret choosing her over your family. Wesley blocked her number. The peace lasted 3 weeks. Then my water broke at 38 weeks, 2 weeks early. Wesley drove me to the hospital, timing contractions. Did you call your parents? I asked between pains. No. This is our moment. Just us. Labor lasted 16 hours. Wesley never left my side. He held my hand, brought me ice chips, told me I was doing great even when I screamed that I was dying. Our daughter was born at 6:47 a.m. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect. She has your eyes, Wesley whispered, tears streaming down his face. We named her Ruth, after Mrs. Kowalski's middle name. It felt right. For 2 days, we existed in our bubble, just the 3 of us, learning how to be a family. The nurses were careful not to let anyone else in. We'd specified no visitors in our birth plan. On day 3, Patricia showed up anyway. The charge nurse stopped her at the maternity ward entrance. I'm sorry, but you're not on the approved visitor list. I am the grandmother. Patricia insisted loudly. My daughter-in-law is confused. I need to see my son now. The nurse called Wesley on the room phone. There's a Patricia here claiming to be family. Wesley's jaw tightened. Tell her to leave. She's not welcome. I heard Patricia's voice rise in the hallway. This is discrimination. I have a right to see my grandchild. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll call security. Patricia's voice got louder, shriller. My son is being manipulated by a killer. She murdered an old woman and now she's keeping me from my grandchild. Someone needs to protect that baby. Several nurses appeared. I heard security being called. Patricia was still shouting when they escorted her out. She's going to claim we're abusing the baby, Wesley said quietly, his face pale. She'll call CPS. Let her try. We have documentation of her harassment. Our attorney will handle it. But I was scared. Patricia was unraveling, and desperate people did dangerous things. We took Ruth home 3 days later. I was still sore and exhausted, learning how to breastfeed, operating on 2 hours of sleep. The last thing I needed was my in-laws making everything worse. They left 3 packages on our doorstep. All baby gifts. Wesley brought them inside without opening them. Could be listening devices, I said, eyeing them suspiciously. Or cameras. You think she'd do that? I think she's desperate and not thinking clearly. We scanned everything with a bug detector Wesley ordered online. Found nothing. The gifts were just gifts, expensive baby clothes toys. She's trying to prove she's a good grandma, I said. So when she calls CPS, she can say she's been supportive and we've been keeping her away for no reason. That's paranoid. Is it? Wesley opened one of the cards. Patricia had written, to our precious granddaughter Ruth. We can't wait to meet you. We love you so much already. Please don't let them keep us apart. Love, Grandma and Grandpa. She wrote that to a baby? Wesley said incredulously. Like Ruth can read it and advocate for herself. She's building a narrative. She's the loving grandparents being cruelly excluded by the evil daughter-in-law. I was right. 2 weeks later, we got a call from Child Protective Services. Someone had reported concerns about Ruth's welfare. The caseworker wouldn't say who, but we knew. They claimed your daughter isn't being properly cared for, the social worker explained during her home visit. That you're both struggling and refusing help from family. She looked around our clean house, saw Ruth sleeping peacefully in her bassinet, reviewed our pediatrician records showing Ruth was healthy and thriving. Everything looks fine here, she said. I'll close the case, but for what it's worth, this happens sometimes with family disputes. Grandparents who feel excluded will make false reports. Can we get documentation of who called? Wesley asked. Anonymous reports are protected, but if it happens again, there could be consequences for the caller. After she left, Wesley was furious. She could have gotten Ruth taken away over her wounded pride. She's escalating. It's going to get worse before it gets better. How do we stop it? I don't think we can. We just have to document everything and protect ourselves. The harassment continued. Patricia and Donald would drive by our house slowly, multiple times a day. Once Wesley caught Donald standing on our porch, peering through the front window. What are you doing? Wesley asked, walking up behind him. Donald jumped. I just wanted to see if you were okay. You won't return our calls because we asked for space. What you're doing is stalking. Don't be dramatic. We're worried about you and the baby. The baby is fine. We're fine. You need to leave. Donald's face reddened. Your mother is devastated. She cries every day. You're killing her. She did this to herself. The PI, the lies about my wife, the CPS call, all of it. We were trying to protect you. From what? From a woman who made a mistake as a kid and has spent years making up for it? Or from having a life separate from yours? Donald left, but the incidents continued. Patricia created a Facebook group called Grandparents' Rights Advocacy and posted photos of Ruth she'd somehow obtained, pictures I'd sent to other family members. She wrote long posts about parental alienation and grandparents being cruelly excluded. My attorney sent a cease and desist. Patricia ignored it. Posted more photos, more rants about how we were abusing her by keeping Ruth away. She's trying to build public support, my attorney explained. Make you look like the villains. When you inevitably get a restraining order, she'll claim it's proof of your control issues. So, what do? Document everything. Every drive-by, every social media post, every boundary violation. Build an airtight case, then we pursue formal legal action. Will it work? She hesitated. Depends on the judge. Grandparents' rights are murky legally, but the stalking and harassment give us strong grounds for protection. 2 months after Ruth was born, Patricia served us with legal papers. She was suing for grandparents' visitation rights, claiming we were unreasonably denying her relationship with her grandchild. She's suing us? Wesley stared at the papers in disbelief. For the right to see our daughter? Apparently, she's claiming she had an established relationship with Ruth that we severed without cause. Ruth is 2 months old. What established relationship? The pregnancy, probably. She's arguing she was involved until we shut her out. We hired a family law attorney. The retainer alone was $15,000. The case could drag on for months. This is insane, Wesley said, shaking his head. My own mother is taking us to court. She's desperate. She's lost control of you, so she's trying to force control through legal means. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Patricia's Facebook posts got more aggressive. She started sharing articles about parental alienation syndrome, posted photos of herself looking sad and defeated, with captions about her stolen grandchild. She's crowdsourcing sympathy, I said, scrolling through her page. Look at these comments. People think we're monsters. Wesley read over my shoulder. They don't know the full story. They don't care. They just see a heartbroken grandma and assume we're horrible. Our attorney advised us not to engage on social media. Anything you post can be used against you. Patricia wants you to react. Don't give her ammunition. So, we stayed silent while she built her narrative. Friends and distant family members started reaching out, asking why we were being so cruel. Some took our side once we explained. Others bought Patricia's version and stopped talking to us. Wesley's relationship with his extended family fractured. His aunts and uncles chose sides. Holiday plans became impossible. We were uninvited from family gatherings to keep the peace. I'm losing my whole family, Wesley said one night, rocking Ruth to sleep, his voice filled with pain. You're not losing anything. They're showing you who they are. Anyone who believes Patricia's lies without asking for your side isn't worth keeping. Easy for you to say. They're not your family. The comment stung, but I understood. He was grieving. The parents he thought he had didn't exist. The family he'd grown up in was built on dysfunction he'd never recognized. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I didn't mean that. I know. The court hearing arrived. Patricia showed up with her attorney and a thick folder of evidence, photos, Facebook posts, text message screenshots. She documented every attempt to contact us, every gift we'd refused. She's been building this case for months, our attorney whispered. This wasn't impulsive. She planned this from the beginning. The judge reviewed both sides. Patricia's attorney painted her as a loving grandmother, cruelly excluded. Our attorney presented the PI investigation, the harassment, the CPS call, the stalking. My clients have repeatedly asked for space, our attorney argued. Mrs. Brennan's response has been to escalate. She's violated their privacy, filed false reports with child services, and created a social media campaign to harass them publicly. Patricia's attorney countered, my client is a concerned grandmother who loves her son and wants a relationship with her grandchild. She's being punished for caring too much. The judge looked tired. I'm ordering mediation. Both parties will attend with a court-appointed mediator. If mediation fails, we'll proceed to a full hearing. My heart sank. Patricia looked victorious. She'd gotten what she wanted, forced contact. Mediation was scheduled for 3 weeks later. It lasted 4 hours. Patricia cried through most of it, claiming we'd stolen her son and grandchild. The mediator asked us to explain our position. Wesley was calm and clear. My parents have boundary issues. They've always been controlling. When my wife got pregnant, they escalated. They hired a private investigator who broke laws to dig up my wife's past. They leaked that information to manipulate me. When that didn't work, they called CPS with false reports. They've stalked us, harassed us online, and violated every boundary we've set. We were trying to protect you. Patricia insisted, dabbing her eyes. She has a criminal record. She killed someone. She was negligent at 22 years old. She spent 8 years making up for it. She's a pediatric nurse who saves children's lives. The only people threatening our family are you and Dad. Donald spoke for the first time. You're being manipulated, son. Can't you see that? She's turned you against your own mother. No, you did that by refusing to respect us as adults. By treating our marriage like something you could control. The mediator tried to find middle ground. What if we established supervised visits once a month at a neutral location? I shook my head. They called CPS on us, filed a lawsuit, stalked us. Why would we reward that behavior with access to our daughter? Because she's their grandchild, the mediator said gently. And children benefit from extended family relationships. Not when that family is toxic and dangerous. Patricia gasped. Dangerous? I'm dangerous. Yes. You hired criminals to stalk me. You broke laws. You publicly harassed us. You've shown zero respect for our autonomy or boundaries. That's dangerous. The mediation ended without agreement. The judge would have to decide. The full hearing took place 2 months later. By then, Ruth was 5 months old. Patricia's attorney brought character witnesses, people who testified that Patricia was a wonderful grandmother to her other grandchildren. Our attorney presented a timeline of harassment with documented evidence. The judge reviewed everything carefully. "I'm going to be frank with both parties," she began. "Mrs. Brennan, your behavior has been concerning. The private investigator, the CPS call, the social media harassment. These are not the actions of someone who respects boundaries. However, I also see parents who are completely cutting off grandparents from a grandchild with no opportunity for relationship." My heart sank. "I'm ordering supervised visitation once a month, 2 hours at a family services facility. A social worker will be present. If Mrs. Brennan respects boundaries and behaves appropriately, we can discuss expanding visitation after 6 months." Patricia looked victorious. We'd lost. Additionally, the judge continued, "I'm ordering both parties to attend family therapy. If Mrs. Brennan violates any boundaries during these visits, or if there's any further harassment, I'll terminate her visitation rights permanently." It wasn't a complete loss, but it wasn't the protection I'd hoped for. The first supervised visit was awkward. Patricia arrived with elaborate gifts and a camera. The social worker immediately confiscated the camera. "No photos," she explained. "The parents haven't consented." Patricia's smile tightened. "I'm her grandmother. I should be allowed photos. Not without parental permission. Those are the rules." For 2 hours, Patricia cooed over Ruth while Wesley and I sat stiffly nearby. She asked us questions we didn't want to answer, commented on Ruth's development, made subtle digs about our parenting choices. "She seems a little small," Patricia said. "Are you feeding her enough?" "She's in the 60th percentile for weight," I said, my voice tight. "Our pediatrician is very happy with her growth. I just worry. Babies need proper nutrition." The social worker caught the implication. "Is there a specific concern about the baby's health, Mrs. Brennan?" No. I just want to make sure she's being cared for properly." After the visit, the social worker pulled us aside. I noted her comments for the record. "If she continues making accusations about your parenting, that could be grounds for termination." We endured 3 more visits. Each one was painful. Patricia would push boundaries in small ways, asking to hold Ruth longer than we were comfortable with, commenting on our clothes or appearance, fishing for information about our lives. But she was careful, never quite crossing the line enough to warrant intervention. Then at visit 5, Patricia brought Donald, despite the judge's order that only she was allowed visitation. When the social worker pointed this out, Patricia claimed she'd misunderstood. "I thought immediate family meant both of us. The order specifically names you, Mrs. Brennan. Your husband is not approved for these visits." Donald refused to leave. The social worker called security. The visit was terminated. "That's a violation," our attorney said when we reported it. "Clear grounds for termination." We filed a motion to end Patricia's visitation rights. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing. Patricia's attorney argued it was an honest mistake. Our attorney presented it as part of a pattern of boundary violations. The judge reviewed the social worker's reports, which documented Patricia's subtle digs and inappropriate comments. "I gave you a chance, Mrs. Brennan," the judge said, her voice firm. "I was clear about the boundaries. You violated them repeatedly. Your visitation rights are terminated." Patricia sobbed. Donald tried to argue. The judge was unmoved. "If you continue to harass this family, I'll issue a restraining order. You need to accept that you've lost these relationships through your own actions." We walked out of the courthouse, exhausted but relieved. It was over. For 6 months, Patricia and Donald left us alone. We thought maybe they'd finally accepted it. Then one afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find our front door unlocked. I always locked it. Always. I called Wesley immediately. "Something's wrong." The door was open. "I'll call the police." "Don't go inside." I waited on the porch with Ruth in my arms. The police arrived within 10 minutes. They searched the house carefully. Nothing was taken. Nothing was damaged. But things had been moved. Ruth's nursery had been rearranged. Photos on our walls were missing. Someone was here, the officer confirmed. No forced entry, though. "Do you know who has keys to your house?" Wesley's face went pale. "My parents," he whispered. "From when they used to watch our dog. We'd forgotten to get the spare key back." The police filed a report for unlawful entry. We changed all the locks that night, checked for cameras or listening devices. In Ruth's room, I found a note tucked into her crib. "You can't keep us away forever. She's ours too." I showed Wesley. He looked devastated. They broke into our house. While we were gone, they violated every boundary. We filed for a restraining order the next day. The breaking and entering gave us clear grounds. The judge approved it immediately. Patricia and Donald were ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from us, our home, and our workplaces. No contact of any kind. For 2 years, they complied. We heard through family that Patricia had declined significantly. She'd become obsessed with us, with Ruth, with being excluded. Donald had tried to get her into therapy, but she'd refused. She spends all day looking at old photos, Wesley's aunt told him. She's convinced herself you've been kidnapped or brainwashed. She can't accept that she drove you away. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and guilt. We hadn't wanted this. We just wanted boundaries and respect. Ruth was now 3 years old, happy, healthy, loved. She had no memory of her paternal grandparents. To her, they simply didn't exist. We'd built a good life. Wesley had changed jobs to something with better hours. I'd gone back to work part-time. We had friends, community, stability. Then Wesley's aunt called with terrible news. Your father had a massive heart attack. He's in the ICU. The doctors don't know if he'll make it. Wesley's hand shook as he held the phone. Is Mom there? Yes. She's a mess. She's asking for you. He looked at me. I should go. Are you sure? He's my dad. Whatever else is true, I need to say goodbye if this is it. I understood. Take all the time you need. Wesley went to the hospital. I stayed home with Ruth, anxious and worried. He called me 6 hours later, exhausted. Dad died about an hour ago. It was quick. He didn't suffer much. Mom is in bad shape. She barely recognizes anyone. The grief mixed with her obsession, it's destroyed her. What do you need? I don't know. Part of me feels relieved. Like maybe with Dad gone, she'll get help. Another part of me just feels sad. These weren't the parents I thought I had, but they're still my parents. The funeral was 4 days later. We debated whether to go. The restraining order made it complicated. I'll ask the court for a temporary exception, our attorney said. For the funeral only, but you'll need to stay away from Patricia. They approved it. We attended the funeral with Ruth, sitting in the back. Patricia was in the front row, surrounded by family. She looked small and broken. During the service, she turned and saw us. Her face crumpled. She started to stand, but her sister pulled her back down. After the burial, Wesley approached her carefully. I'm sorry for your loss, Mom. She stared at him like she couldn't believe he was real. Wesley, you came. He was my dad, too. Tears streamed down her face. I've missed you so much. Please, can we talk? Can I meet my granddaughter? Wesley looked at Ruth in my arms, then back at his mother. I don't think that's a good idea. Please. I know I made mistakes. I was wrong about her. She gestured at me. I was trying to protect you, but I went too far. I see that now. Can't we start over? Mom, you broke into our house. You stalked us. You tried to take our daughter through the courts. Those aren't just mistakes. I was scared. I thought I was losing you. You created the exact outcome you feared. If you'd just respected our boundaries from the beginning, we'd have had a relationship. Patricia reached for him. It's not too late. I'll do anything. Therapy, whatever you want. Just don't keep my granddaughter from me. Wesley gently moved her hand away. I need to think about it. Today is about Dad. We'll talk later. We left before she could argue. Over the next few weeks, Patricia sent letters. She'd started therapy. She acknowledged her mistakes. She begged for another chance. What do you think? Wesley asked, reading through them. I think she's grieving and desperate. I don't know if the changes are real or if she's just telling us what we want to hear. She seems different in these letters. More self-aware. Maybe, or maybe she's learned what to say to manipulate us. Wesley met with her therapist with Patricia's permission. The therapist confirmed Patricia was working on her issues, acknowledging her controlling behavior and obsessive tendencies. She has a long way to go, the therapist said, but she's making progress. The question was whether we were willing to let her try. Wesley came home conflicted. Part of me wants to believe she's changed. Another part remembers everything she did. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, I said. But we need to move slowly. Careful boundaries. The first sign of old patterns? We're done. We decided on supervised visits, similar to what the court had ordered years ago. Once a month at a neutral location with strict rules. The first visit, Patricia was tentative. She asked permission before picking up Ruth. Complimented us on how well we were raising her. Didn't push any boundaries. Thank you for this, she said at the end. I know I don't deserve it. For 6 months, the visits went well. Patricia seemed genuinely changed. She respected our rules. Didn't try to push for more time. Sent appropriate gifts for Ruth's birthday. Then gradually things started to shift. She'd arrive 5 minutes early, testing boundaries. She'd ask questions about our schedule, our plans, small things, but familiar patterns. I think she's backsliding, I told Wesley. Watch how she talks. She's fishing for information again. Maybe she's just curious, trying to be involved. Or she's building back up to controlling behavior. At the next visit, Patricia suggested we all go to the zoo together. Like a real family outing. Ruth would love it. We're not ready for that, Wesley said. Patricia smiled, her lips tight. I just thought it would be nice. But if you're going to keep treating me like a stranger, maybe these visits aren't working. The manipulation was subtle, but there. Agree to her terms or lose the relationship entirely. The visits are working fine, I said. What's not working is you pushing for more than we've agreed to. I'm just trying to be a grandmother. You're trying to expand boundaries we set for good reasons. This is exactly what got us here in the first place. Patricia's face hardened. The mask slipped. So, I'm supposed to grovel forever? Never have a normal relationship with my granddaughter. You're supposed to respect our boundaries without making it about your needs. She stood abruptly. This was a mistake. I've been trying so hard, going to therapy, working on myself, but nothing will ever be good enough for you. Mom, sit down, Wesley said. Let's talk about this. No, I'm done. She left the visit early. Sent a text later that she needed space to work on herself. She just wanted us to chase after her, I said, reading the text. To beg her to come back. When we don't, she'll paint herself as the victim again. Wesley looked tired. Can we just be done with this? I'm exhausted. Yeah, we can be done. We didn't reach out. Patricia didn't either. The monthly visits stopped. A year passed. Then I got an email at work from Patricia's attorney. Mrs. Brennan is filing a lawsuit against you personally for alienation of affection, claiming you intentionally destroyed her relationship with her son. She's seeking damages of $500,000. I stared at the email in disbelief. She was suing me for $500,000 for the crime of existing. I called our attorney immediately. Can she actually do this? Alienation of affection lawsuits are rare and rarely successful, but she can file. It'll be expensive to defend and emotionally draining. That might be her real goal, to punish you through the legal system. We were back in court again. Patricia's attorney painted me as a master manipulator who'd stolen her son and grandchild. Our attorney presented years of documentation showing Patricia's harassment and boundary violations. This is retaliation, our attorney argued. My client has done nothing except protect her family from Ms. Brennan's documented pattern of abuse. The case dragged on for 8 months. Depositions, motions, legal fees that drained our savings. Patricia didn't care about winning. She cared about making our lives miserable. Finally, the judge dismissed the case. There's no evidence to support Ms. Brennan's claims. This appears to be harassment disguised as litigation. If Ms. Brennan files any further frivolous lawsuits, I'll sanction her attorney. We won, but it didn't feel like victory. We were exhausted, broke, and traumatized. Patricia had found a new way to hurt us. She'll never stop, Wesley said, his voice flat. As long as she's alive, she'll find ways to make our lives hell. So, we make sure she can't reach us. New jobs, maybe even new names. Create distance she can't cross. I shouldn't have to run from my own mother. You shouldn't have to do a lot of things. But here we are. We made changes. Wesley took a job in a different city. We sold our house and moved. Didn't tell his extended family where we were going. Changed our phone numbers. For 3 years, we've lived in relative peace. Ruth is now 7 years old. She knows she has grandparents somewhere, but doesn't ask about them much. We've built a life without Patricia and Donald's shadow hanging over us. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty if I'm the reason Wesley lost his parents. But then I remember everything they did. The stalking, the lawsuits, the breaking and entering, the way Patricia twisted every situation to make herself the victim. I didn't destroy Wesley's relationship with his parents. They did that themselves by refusing to accept that their son was an adult with his own life. Last week, we got a letter forwarded from our old address. Patricia had hired another private investigator and found us again. I know where you are, the letter said. I'll always find you. You can't keep my granddaughter from me forever. Wesley read it and smiled grimly. She sounds absolutely unhinged. Should we be worried? I think we should document it and send it to our attorney. If she shows up here, we'll get another restraining order. We know the drill. I kept the letter as evidence. Added it to the file we'd been building for years. Sometimes I imagined writing my own letter back to Patricia. Dear Patricia, you spent so much energy trying to control your son that you lost him completely. You could have been a part of Ruth's life if you just respected boundaries. Instead, you chose manipulation, harassment, and legal warfare. The life I was supposedly ruining, you ruined it yourself. Every boundary violation, every lawsuit, every stalking incident pushed us further away. You created the exact outcome you feared most. And you have no one to blame but yourself. But I never sent it. What would be the point? Patricia would never accept responsibility. In her mind, she was the victim. The devoted mother and grandmother cruelly excluded by an evil daughter-in-law. The truth didn't matter to people like Patricia. Only control mattered. And when she lost control, She destroyed everything rather than admit she was wrong. I thought about Mrs. Kowalski sometimes, about how my negligence had cost her life. How I'd spent 8 years trying to make up for that mistake. How Patricia had weaponized my guilt and grief for her own purposes. Mrs. Kowalski would have hated Patricia. She'd been a kind woman who believed in giving people second chances, who trusted me to help her even when her mind was failing. I'd let her down, but I'd also learned from it. Became someone better. Someone who protected vulnerable people instead of neglecting them. Patricia had taught me a different lesson. That some people would rather burn everything down than admit they were wrong. That boundaries weren't negotiable, even with family. That sometimes the healthiest choice was complete separation. Ruth called from the kitchen. "Mom, can we make cookies?" "Of course, sweetie." I put Patricia's letter in the file and went to bake with my daughter. Wesley was reading in the living room. Our house was peaceful, safe, ours. Patricia had tried to ruin my life. She'd exposed my deepest shame, weaponized my past, and turned my marriage into a battlefield. But she'd failed. Because at the end of the day, Wesley and I chose each other. We built boundaries and defended them. We protected our family from people who claimed to love us while actively harming us. The letter from Patricia sat in its file. Another piece of documentation in case we needed it. Another attempt at control that would ultimately fail. I'd given Patricia a taste of her own medicine by excluding her from our lives. She'd responded by trying to destroy me legally, emotionally, and financially. But we were still standing, still together, still building the life we wanted. Patricia could hire all the private investigators she wanted, file all the lawsuits she could afford, send all the threatening letters that made her feel powerful. None of it would change the fundamental truth that she'd lost us through her own actions, and no amount of legal warfare or harassment would bring us back. Ruth and I mixed cookie dough while Wesley came in to help. This was our life now. Small, peaceful, free from the chaos Patricia created. Sometimes the only way to win against toxic people was to remove yourself from the game entirely, to build walls they couldn't scale and defend boundaries they couldn't cross. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it well. And Ruth would grow up knowing that family was earned through love and respect, not demanded through manipulation and control. The cookies went into the oven. Ruth hugged my legs, flour dusting her clothes. Wesley kissed my forehead. "I love our life," he said quietly. "Me too." Patricia would never understand that. She'd see our peace as a punishment, our boundaries as rejection. She'd spend the rest of her life convinced she was the victim.